Alright, so we're back, of course, talking about some Final Fantasy VII Remake, and we're just hopping right into it. I want somebody to die. Oh, wait, hang on, that sounds a little dark. Maybe not quite that abrupt, but what we're talking about today is more of like a casual discussion when it comes to what's going to happen going forward with, obviously, Rebirth and beyond. But it's that I kind of want that feeling we had back when it came to the original Final Fantasy VII, right? We've talked a lot about character fates when it comes to the remake trilogy, and who might die, who might survive, all that shit, right? We've been talking about that shit for almost 3 years now. What I mean by capturing that feeling of what we had with the original FF7 is that surprise factor and that heartbreak of a character death. Because I guess really it's just one character death that we're sort of expecting at this point. Whether or not it will or won't happen, I guess remains to be seen. But of course we're talking about Aerith. And the thing is, if that death still happens in a similar fashion, exactly the same, or maybe at a later point, like that's still going to hurt, right? It's still going to hurt whenever we lose Aerith if it happens in the remake trilogy. But it's to be expected. So you're kind of always on edge, or we're going to be, once we get to like the Forgotten Capital, right? As soon as we get to the Forgotten Capital and any time beyond then, we're all just kind of anticipating Aerith's death. So when it happens, it's still going to hurt, but we're kind of prepared for it. Very similar to actually like Jesse Biggs and Wedge's death scene when it came to Remake, right? Like as soon as I hit Train Graveyard while playing Remake for the first time, it's all I could think about. I'm like, good God, as soon as I get past this, we're getting to the fucking pillar section. I'm going to have to watch these characters die that I've fallen in love with in Remake, much more than I did in the original FF7. You don't really get a whole lot of time with them. So the fact that I knew it was coming, it still was emotional. It still hit me, dude. The big scene was kind of emotional, but the Jesse scene kind of got the waterworks going, man. So it can still be effective. Now, obviously, that's a bit of a side effect from having played the original FF7. I'm braced for these characters' deaths. Not everybody that's playing the Remake trilogy has played OG FF7, right? So if you're a brand new player and you play Remake for the first time, you don't know that Jesse and Biggs and Wedge are supposed to die here, right? You're not ready for that. That's what really comes down to what are they trying to do with Remake in terms of the expectations going forward, especially since the ending of Remake, obviously that's a whole nother tangent, but are they trying to appeal more towards the old players or new players, right? Which they say in marketing usually that it's for both, and it really is at the end of the day. But how much are they going to be trying to subvert the expectations of their older players? Because that's got to be the biggest part of the audience that is playing the Remake trilogy, right? Obviously, Remake got a lot of brand new players. There are a lot of people that never played FF7 before. They started with Remake. So there's a good chunk of players for that. But you got to imagine that the majority of people who bought a Final Fantasy VII Remake were people that played the original FF7. And there is a plethora of ways you can subvert expectations, from locations to stories to characters, side quests, all that other stuff, right? But in this sense, we're talking about characters' fates, characters' deaths. And if I'm honest, when it comes to the remake story, I kind of want somebody else to die. And that's not to say that I want somebody else to die in place of characters who are supposed to die based on OG FF7. I'm not saying I want somebody else to die instead of Aerith. Aerith can still die, and any characters that are alive that should be dead could maybe die at a later point or something like that. Whatever the case. I'm just saying, I kind of want them to surprise us again. That's kind of the whole point of this discussion or video. I want to feel what I felt the first time that I watched Aerith die. Something I'm not expecting. It comes out of nowhere. You don't even expect necessarily for Sephiroth to be there, much less kill off a main character. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be Sephiroth, but obviously that makes a lot of sense. It could also be Genova, or maybe some other big bad evil that we're not expecting, or maybe even like a character that's a bad guy, but not necessarily the biggest, baddest evil of the story that also gets away with killing a main character. Like, there's a bunch of different ways you could do that. But it can't just be an empty death. It cannot be a death that just happens to have a death, just to make sure that you realize that this bad guy is actually a threat. It needs to have purpose, it needs to have meaning. And obviously it's kind of hard to like predict or theorize what that could be or where that could happen at, just because we don't know the direction of the story. Like, we're told it's going to be FF7, like the original FF7 going forward, but like, who knows how accurate or true that's going to be, right? There's got to be some new shit, right? Whether or not Zack is alive or dead, for example, he's going to have some sort of part in the story that he did not have in OG FF7. So there's going to be new shit here and there. There's obviously going to be a new objective or goal for Sephiroth. Outside of just black materia, obviously I think that's still going to be a part of the story. There's got to be more than just that again, right? Because I feel like that's not, you can't just do the same thing again, exactly. So obviously it's kind of hard to say when and where characters would die, how they would die, who would kill them, but we do know that Sephiroth could do that at any point. We know that based on the end of Remake, where, you know, Cloud's not even remotely close to being able to kill Sephiroth or defeat Sephiroth. It's like, he can't even touch him. Sephiroth's just toying with him. So really, if Sephiroth wanted to be that guy, he could just like body us at any point, and we couldn't really stop him, at least as of right now. I don't know how our group would get the power or capabilities of being able to defeat him if like Cloud can't even land a blow. Now, the one thing that could kind of prevent him from killing off any of our party members, at least for an extended period of time, is that he might need us for something, which is kind of how Remake went, right? Because it seems to be implied by the ending that he needed us or wanted us to defeat the Whisper Harbinger, right? So maybe that could be a thing going forward, where that's the reason why Sephiroth isn't killing us, even though he could, because maybe he needs us for something else. And the obvious thing that comes to mind for that would be the same thing that happens in OG FF7, where Sephiroth needs us to get the black materia for him. Then again, that's not necessarily the case, just because when it came to original FF7, the kind of stipulation with getting black materia is that you have to solve a puzzle inside the Temple of the Ancients, and then you're crushed, right? Whoever solves the puzzle dies to create the black materia. And they pointed out in OG FF7 that Sephiroth could just like throw any of his like reunion clones at the Temple of the Ancients to get that going, right? To get that solved, to get the black materia for himself. Which you think he would probably do in Remake just because of the level of intelligence that Sephiroth seems to have and the knowledge that he has. He should know that that's a possibility. But also, given that he might have past knowledge of OG FF7, that he would already know that as well, right? He should be so many steps ahead of our group. Like, he could get the black materia by himself kind of at any point. There's also some things here and there that I just kind of wish or hope that they address when it comes to Remake. Because, for one, like, if Sephiroth is really trying to attain this goal, get the black materia, summon meteor, all that other stuff, then there's nothing really preventing him from just waltzing up into the gold saucer and cutting Dio's fucking head off and just taking the keystone and doing the shit himself, right? That's what he should realistically do. Again, we're just talking realistically here. Like, as soon as the Remake story ended, our group's on foot walking to calm, right? Sephiroth started to be flying a gold saucer and doing all this. He should be so far ahead of us that by the time we get to the Temple of the Ancients and the Rebirth story, it's no longer there, because he's already got the black materia himself. Like, that's what makes sense, because he can fly, and we can't. We're on foot, taking for goddamn ever to walk anywhere. Now, the reason why that's not going to happen is because it's a video game, right? They need to tell a story. You could also explain it away that he just wants to keep fucking with our group, keep fucking with Cloud, and that's why he's kind of always nearby and never really that far ahead of us. But I'm just saying, if he's trying to realistically attain this goal, that's what you do. Now, that's a whole nother tangent we just went down, but to get back on topic, like, Sephiroth shouldn't really need us as much as he maybe did in OG FF7, or even how much he needed us when it came to Remake, especially now that it seems like he's free of something Genova or something like that. It seems like he got his memories back at the end of Remake, where he's like fully Sephiroth again, but he's still very much a bad guy. And if he's really trying to fuck with and break down Cloud, especially mentally, then killing people that he's close to would obviously do that. Now, who would that be? That's a whole different kind of tangent. That's why I feel like if there's going to be another character death separate to what we expect, it's got to be somebody important. And if we're thinking about who's important to Cloud, it's the big two. It's Tifa or Barret. Those are the two characters that he's like closest to when it comes to FF7 story, and obviously Remake as well. And obviously I mean that as in like when the FF7 story picks up, not anything really prior to that. Though you could kind of throw Zack into that conversation as well, because if Zack is alive when it comes to Remake, and maybe he gets some sort of reunion with Cloud and Aerith and everybody at some point, you could still have Sephiroth kill Zack in front of Cloud, which would still be a death that we're kind of expecting because Zack is supposed to be dead. It would still hurt and be affected, but that'd be a good way to break down Cloud mentally. If he gets all of his memories back, remembers who Zack is, but now Zack is alive, but then he gets killed by Sephiroth. Like, that shit could be very, very effective, and obviously Zack's my boy, so anytime I gotta watch Zack die, I'm gonna feel it. But putting aside Zack, because that one does seem kind of obvious, but still effective, it would have to be somebody from the party. Now, depending on how far into the Remake story we're gonna be at whenever a character could die or would die, obviously Cloud's gonna be close to the entire party, right? They're gonna travel together around the world trying to defeat Sephiroth. Everybody's gonna become close. So every death could be effective, but if we're trying to hurt Cloud the most, Tifa or Barret. And if we're being honest here, and I hate to mention it again because I mentioned it in a somewhat recent video, Tifa. Like, Tifa makes the most sense if you're trying to hurt Cloud and hurt the party. And I know a lot of Tifa fans don't want to hear it, but man, it would be the most effective. It's just a matter of when and where and how they do it. You can't just kill off any of the main party members just on a whim, right? There needs to be an effective scene for it to happen. I just don't know when and where they do that. That'd be up to the devs. What I'm going to say next is kind of against the entire premise of this video because we're talking about characters dying, but I do think it'd be kind of cool if we get like this attempt at a surprise kill, right? Something very similar to what happens at Temple of the Ancients in OG. Sephiroth kind of coming out of nowhere to kill one of our characters, but this time Cloud actually intervenes. This would kind of be the benefit of him getting the visions that he's getting. He should at some point, depending on if he gets more visions going forward, like he should know that Sephiroth is going to attempt to kill somebody. So it'd be kind of cool if he gets that kind of redemption where, like, let's just say theoretically, Sephiroth goes to attempt to kill Tifa. This time, Cloud actually blocks him. It'd be like them subverting expectations twice, right? Because you're expecting Sephiroth to kill a party member in this moment, just like he did in FF7 original. But then they subvert expectations because Cloud actually intervenes, something he didn't do in OG FF7. But also kind of set up your expectations going forward that if Sephiroth were to attempt to do this again, Cloud would then intervene. But maybe the next time he doesn't or can't. And to kind of keep rolling with this Tifa discussion here, we got that VR vision in the Shinra building, right, with Remake. And in that vision, Sephiroth kills Barret and Tifa. And later on in Remake, he comes through on that threat, right? He kills Barret. Now, obviously, Barret was not going to die in that moment because of the Whispers. But he's at least shown Cloud that he's for real with these threats. He could do this at kind of any point. So the fact that there's still that threat out there of him killing Tifa, it shows me that he's at least going to make an attempt on Tifa's life at some point. It's just a matter of whether or not he's going to be successful. Maybe this time, again, Cloud intervenes. And obviously, it doesn't have to be Tifa. That's just the example we're using here. It's the most effective. It's the closest character to the character of Cloud, which is why it would work, right? But if, like, later on in the story, Sephiroth comes out of nowhere, or whoever comes out of nowhere, and kills, like, I don't know, Sid. Like, you can't tell me that's going to be as effective. It can work. It can still maybe give us some emotions, right? Make the characters feel something. Make us feel something. But it's just not going to be as effective as a character like Tifa, or Barret, or Aerith, who are characters that have been there since the beginning. And the reason why the deaths of characters like Aerith or a potential Tifa death are so effective is because they're so innocent of characters, right? That's a loss of innocent life. Like, if you were to kill Barret off, I would hurt a lot, right? But he's also a character that has flaws, a character that's done some bad stuff in the past. Even like he tells Dyne, right? He's not any more innocent than the character of Dyne. He shouldn't hold Marlene any more than Dyne should. But the loss of innocent life is what's so effective. People that don't deserve it, right? That's why, Sephiroth just so coldly killing Aerith in original FF7 works, man. And it could work again in Remake, depending on who the character is. But that, of course, is when I pass the video off to you guys. So let's put aside the obvious Aerith in the room here. If a main party member had to die, who would it be? Who would be the most effective to either cripple Cloud's morale or maybe the entire party's morale as a whole? And that's also worth mentioning, too. If Sephiroth is trying to, like, diminish the party's morale or break them all physically, mentally, whatever the case, Barret's a good candidate for that because he's that pseudo-leader type. Even if he's not really the leader of the party, he likes to think that he is, right? And if you were to take him out of the equation where you don't have him constantly yelling and trying to lead the group and boost the group's morale, that could cripple everybody a lot, man. But my dudes, that is officially going to be the end of the video. Subscribe to the channel if you guys are new. Turn on notifications. Social networks in the description below. Follow me on Twitter, dashingdavidYT. That's it. Bye.
Used to care what people thought, but now I care more. And nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. We spend it with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane. We in here like Logain or leave it like Cobain.